They didn't count calories. They didn't own a fitness tracker. And almost none of them had a weight problem. If you grew up with grandparents who lived through the post-war years, you've probably noticed something strange. The people in those old black and white photos, they were slim. Not because they were starving, not because they ran marathons before breakfast. They just lived a certain way, and that way of living did the work for them. Today, nearly 1 in 4 adults in Germany is severely overweight. In the U.S., it's even higher. 2 generations ago, you might have known one overweight person in your entire village because it was genuinely rare. So what did they know that we've forgotten? Nothing, actually. That's the surprising part. They weren't secret nutrition experts. They didn't have protein powder or expensive coaches. They simply lived differently. And there are 5 things they did, completely without thinking, that kept them lean. 5 habits so ordinary they never even had names for them. The first one has nothing to do with food at all. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll see exactly why that matters. Let me take you back to a winter from decades ago. Picture a bedroom so cold you could see your own breath as a little cloud when you woke up. One room in the house was heated, the living room with its tile stove or coal oven. The rest of the apartment had the warmth of a storage cellar. You went to bed with a hot water bottle. The trip to the bathroom at night felt like a small adventure in survival. And hidden inside that discomfort is the first secret almost nobody talks about. It was the cold itself. A cool home kept people lean. That sounds strange at first, but it makes complete sense. When the air around you is cold, your body has to generate its own heat, and to do that, it burns energy. Researchers today actually link the rise in obesity partly to our modern habit of keeping our homes at a constant, comfortable temperature all year round. Our internal furnace is basically lying on the couch, barely needed. Here's what's happening on a biological level. Your body has a special type of fat called brown fat. Unlike regular fat, which stores energy, brown fat burns it. It generates heat directly, and it activates in the cold. Studies show that people who spend several hours a day in cooler environments actually build more of this metabolically active brown fat over time. Our grandparents trained this system every single winter, without a gym membership, without a subscription, without even realizing it. You don't need to sleep in an igloo, your heating bill too for that matter. Now to the second secret. Do you remember what it felt like to get a single piece of candy? One piece, not a bag. A full chocolate bar was treated like a family heirloom, divided carefully, 1 square at a time, stretched across the entire week. Cake appeared on Sundays with coffee, not because it was Tuesday. You already know where this is going. Sugar. Back then, it wasn't discipline that kept people from eating sugar constantly. It was availability. Sugar was expensive and scarce. After the war in Germany, it was rationed, and the sugar ration card was one of the very last to be abolished, not until spring 1950. A spoonful in your coffee was a small celebration. You tasted it, you savored it. The numbers tell the story clearly. Around 1950, the average person in Germany consumed roughly 28 kilograms of sugar per year. Today, it's comfortably over 33, and depending on how you count, closer to 40. That doesn't sound dramatic until you break it down by day. Many of us are taking in around 90 grams of sugar daily. That's more than 30 sugar cubes every single day. If you stacked 30 sugar cubes on your kitchen table and ate them one by one, you'd probably stop at 15 and feel genuinely uncomfortable. The World Health Organization suggests 25 to 50 grams would be quite enough. We smile politely and carry on. And here's what makes it so insidious today. Sugar has gone into hiding. Back then, everyone knew exactly where it lived, in the sugar bowl. Today it lurks in the fruity yogurt that looks healthy, in the ketchup, in the granola that's marketed as a wellness food, in the salad dressing that is secretly a dessert. Our grandmothers had one enemy, and they knew its face. We have 30 spies in the refrigerator. There's another angle almost no one considers. Our grandparents didn't drink their calories. Thirsty? Water. That was it. No one would have thought to pour half a liter of cola alongside lunch, or start the day with a caramel creamed coffee that's really a dessert in a cup. Today, roughly a quarter of our total sugar intake comes from beverages alone. And liquid sugar barely registers as hunger. Your brain doesn't count it the way it counts food, but your body absolutely does. A glass of apple juice carries about as much sugar as a glass of cola. It just wears the word juice like a halo. The previous generation simply didn't pour those calories in. Sugar was a rare, welcome guest, not the tenant who never moves out. The third secret sits right on the dinner table. Not in what was served, but in how much and how real it was. Picture a meal from that era. What was actually on the plate, not a mountain of food. Not an overflowing portion where half went back to the kitchen uneaten. A slice of dense rye bread with lard. A bowl of soup, potatoes with cottage cheese. A piece of meat, not every day. Meat was precious. The proper roast appeared on Sundays. Ooh! That's where the phrase Sunday roast comes from. Not Tuesday roast, not just because roast. That's the third secret, smaller portions and real food. In the years right after the war, the daily ration for many people was capped at around 1,500 calories, and often that wasn't even met. From necessity, people learned something that's almost vanished today: nothing gets wasted. Leftovers weren't called leftovers, they were called tomorrow's lunch. Stale bread became soup or a baked casserole. You ate until you were satisfied, not until the plate was empty, and then a little more, and then just one more small helping. And the food itself. It came from the garden, from the farmer down the road, from the small local shop where the woman behind the counter knew everyone by name. Potatoes were potatoes, butter was butter. There was no frozen pizza, no shelf full of crackers, no 20 varieties of snack food whispering, "Take me," at the checkout. When an animal was slaughtered, the whole animal was used. Bone broth wasn't a wellness trend with a premium price tag. It was just Tuesday dinner. We've multiplied our portion sizes dramatically. Studies suggest average restaurant portions in many Western countries are 2 to 3 times larger than they were 50 years ago. Meanwhile, what's in the food has become harder to recognize. Ultra-processed products now make up the majority of calories for many people, engineered to be eaten past the point of fullness. Real food tends to stop you naturally. Processed food is specifically designed not to. Now here's the fourth secret, and this is the one that, once you understand it, completely reframes a concept you've probably heard thrown around for years. Ask your grandparents, or think back to your own early childhood. There were 3 meals: breakfast, lunch, dinner, and in between, nothing. The kitchen was closed, full stop. If you crept to the refrigerator between meals, you heard about it, loudly enough that it went through 2 walls. There were no snacks, no nibbling at the desk, no granola bar in the car, no handful of gummies in front of the television. Partly because, if there was a television at all, it had 3 channels and went dark at midnight. You ate in the morning. Then a long pause until midday. After the evening meal, that was it. Overnight, 12, 13 hours, nothing happened at all. Today we call this intermittent fasting. We write thick books about it and sell expensive courses on the subject. Back then they called it Wednesday. And it was quietly one of the greatest gifts they gave their bodies without knowing it. Here's why. Every time you eat something, even a small apple, even a biscuit that doesn't count, your body releases a hormone called insulin. And as long as insulin is circulating in your blood, your body locks the door on fat burning. Completely, like a shop closed for summer holidays. Nutrition scientists explain it this way. Only after roughly 4 to 5 hours without food does insulin drop back down enough for your body to access its stored reserves. If you graze all day, just a little something here, a small snack there, you keep insulin elevated continuously. You're blocking your own fat burning around the clock without realizing it. Our grandparents didn't know any of this. They just lived it. 3 meals, long pauses, night rest for the digestive system, constant snacking, The idea of just grabbing something quickly is a remarkably new invention. And it's one of the quietest reasons why weight today tends to stick like old chewing gum under a school desk. The fifth and final secret takes us out of the kitchen entirely. Step outside with me for a moment, onto the streets of that earlier era. How did your grandmother get to the market? On foot, with a basket over her arm. How did children get to school? Walking, rain or wind, often several kilometers, and if you believe the stories, always uphill in both directions. How was laundry done? By hand, in a washtub, scrubbed and wrung until your arms burned? Carpets went over the fence and were beaten until the dust rose and the neighbor started coughing. No elevator, no dishwasher, no car parked at every door. That is the fifth secret, constant movement, all day long, just as part of living. Movement back then wasn't a program you signed up for. It wasn't scheduled. It wasn't called exercise. It was simply life. And on Sundays, after the midday meal, the whole family went walking, whether you wanted to or not. Around through the woods or around the village, in your good clothes, often with relatives you only half enjoyed seeing. The numbers are striking. A farm worker in the 1950s burned between 3,000 and 5,000 calories per day through ordinary physical labor. The average office worker today doesn't come close, not even with 2 sessions a week at the gym. Around 2/3 of adults in Central Europe now get barely any meaningful movement as they age. Experts say directly and clearly this lack of movement is one of the primary drivers of weight gain. We drive to the gym in a car, to walk on a treadmill. If that doesn't make you smile a little, nothing will. It's not about sport in the traditional sense. It's about the 1,000 small movements that used to be woven into ordinary life, and that comfort has quietly removed, one convenience at a time. Thank you, remote control. Thank you, escalator. Now, before we wrap this up, I want to address something. There's almost always one counter-argument, usually from someone at Sunday coffee. Let's call him Uncle Reiner. Wait a moment, people back then died much younger on average. How healthy could it really have been? And you know what? Uncle Reiner is half right. Let's look at it honestly, because the truth here matters. Yes, life expectancy was dramatically lower. Around 150 years ago, average life expectancy at birth was somewhere between 36 and 40 years. Today, it's around 78 for men and 83 for women in many Western countries. That sounds like people were dropping dead in their mid-30s. But they weren't. That low average is driven almost entirely by one devastating number. Back then, nearly 1/3 of all children died before they turned 5. Those early deaths pull the average down brutally. A child who made it past those early years had surprisingly good odds of living a long life. A 5-year-old in that era could expect to live, on average, another 50 years, and many lived well past 70 or 80. The grandfather with the white beard, the grandmother who was still running the garden at 90 with firm opinions about everything, they absolutely existed. So what did people actually die from? Infectious diseases, pneumonia, tuberculosis, in a time before antibiotics and vaccines. Complications in childbirth, accidents during heavy physical labor. The 2 world wars. That is a profound gift, and no reasonable person would want to reverse it. But here's the critical point. What people back then almost never suffered from is precisely what makes millions of us sick today. Severe obesity, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver. The whole cluster of what we now call diseases of affluence. Those were genuine rarities. They died younger, yes, but not from what's killing us now. That means we don't have to choose. We get to keep modern medicine and all its miracles. And we can still reclaim the everyday habits that protect us from the diseases of our own time. The best of both worlds. Here's what I find beautiful about all of this. There was no miracle cure. No secret diet. No expensive pill or powder with fine print on the label. It was simply a way of living. A cooler home that kept the internal furnace burning. Less sugar, because it was precious, and no calories drunk from bottles. Smaller portions of real food, from the garden to the bone broth. 3 meals with long pauses in between because constant snacking simply wasn't part of life. And a body that moved from morning to evening, not on a schedule, just because that was what living required. We can't bring back that era, and we don't have to. We keep the modern medicine that lets us live so much longer. But a few of those quiet secrets, we can invite them back. Turn the bedroom thermostat down a couple of degrees at night. Make sugar the occasional guest it used to be, instead of the permanent tenant. Close the kitchen between meals, really close it. Walk the short distance instead of getting in the car for 200 meters. And on Sundays, go outside with family, with friends, the way people used to. Maybe it'll smell a little like Sunday roast again. And maybe you'll notice something. What our grandparents simply lived, without any of today's science or expensive tools, still works just as well as it ever did. One more thing before we say goodbye. I know exactly what a lot of you are thinking right now. Nothing between meals? I'll never manage that. And you know what? You don't have to go cold turkey. In the next video, I'm going to show you 10 snacks that contain almost no carbohydrates, so you can still treat yourself without throwing your body off balance. Which of these 5 secrets surprised you most? Or which one did you already know? Maybe because you remember it from your own grandparents? Tell me in the comments. I read them all. If you want to see that snack video the moment it goes live, hit subscribe. Not because every channel says so, but because I'm specifically making it as a follow-up to what we just talked about here. It fits. And one last thing. Everything in this video is based on research and on patterns I find genuinely fascinating. It's not medical advice. If you have specific health concerns, please talk to your doctor. But as a starting point for thinking differently about everyday habits, I think it's worth every minute. See you in the next one.